Plato was born around 427 BCE in Athens into an influential and aristocratic family with deep political connections. His relatives included prominent statesmen, and he grew up in an intellectual environment where discussions about politics, philosophy, and the nature of justice were common. Athens at this time was in the midst of the Peloponnesian War, and the instability of the period shaped his early worldview. Although he likely received a traditional upper-class Greek education, including music, gymnastics, and poetry, Plato's early life was heavily marked by political turmoil and disappointment with Athenian leadership. He initially considered a career in politics, as was common for young men of his social standing, but the corruption and factionalism he observed discouraged him. These early experiences laid the groundwork for his lifelong interest in the nature of good governance, the structure of society, and the philosophical foundations of justice. A pivotal moment in Plato's life came when he met Socrates, whose unique method of questioning and pursuit of ethical truth profoundly influenced him. Socrates challenged traditional assumptions, encouraging the young Plato to seek deeper philosophical clarity rather than accept inherited beliefs. Plato soon became one of Socrates' most dedicated students and companions. He eventually abandoned his early political ambitions, convinced that meaningful political reform required deeper understanding of virtue and justice than Athens possessed. The trial and execution of Socrates in 399 BC had a lasting impact on Plato. He saw Socrates' death as evidence of the shortcomings of Athenian democracy and the dangers of uninformed majorities making crucial decisions. This event not only strengthened Plato's commitment to philosophy, but also became a turning point in his thinking about political systems, ethical foundations, and the need for wise and educated leadership. Following the execution of Socrates, Plato left Athens, partly for safety and partly to continue his philosophical development abroad. His travels reportedly took him to regions such as Megara, where he studied with Euclides, and possibly to Egypt, Cyrene, and southern Italy. These journeys exposed him to mathematical traditions, religious practices, and political structures different from those in Athens. In southern Italy, he encountered followers of Pythagoras, whose mathematical and metaphysical ideas deeply shaped Plato's own thinking about order, harmony, and the structure of reality. During these years, Plato also began forming the philosophical ideas that would later appear in his dialogues. His travels broadened his intellectual horizons and reinforced his belief that wisdom required both experience and rigorous inquiry. By the mid-380s BCE, Plato had gathered enough insight to return to Athens with the intention of establishing a lasting institution for philosophical education. Around 387 BCE, Plato founded the Academy in Athens, often considered the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. The Academy served as a center for the study of philosophy, mathematics, politics, and science, attracting students from across the Greek world. Instruction was based on discussion, systematic inquiry, and exploration of abstract concepts. Plato's goal was to train thinkers capable of understanding the principles underlying just leadership and rational governance. The Academy operated for nearly 900 years, far beyond Plato's lifetime, influencing countless generations of scholars. Notably, Aristotle studied there for roughly 20 years before founding his own school. The establishment of the Academy marked a major milestone in intellectual history. It provided a formal environment for sustained philosophical inquiry and helped institutionalize the study of logic and theoretical reasoning. It also gave Plato a stable foundation from which to develop and refine his written works. Plato wrote most of his philosophical ideas in the form of dialogues, literary works featuring conversations, often with Socrates as the central figure. His early dialogues focused on ethics, virtue, and the Socratic method of questioning. These works attempted to capture the spirit of Socrates' approach, while exploring topics such as courage, piety, and the nature of knowledge. Dialogues like Euthyphro, Apology, and Credo provide insight into Socrates' life and trial, preserving ideas that would otherwise have been lost. Plato used dialogue form not only as a literary technique, but also as a philosophical tool, allowing readers to examine arguments through structured discussion. These early writings established Plato as a central figure in Greek philosophy and helped transmit Socratic thinking to later generations. Through them, Plato laid the groundwork for more complex theories he would develop in his later works. In his Middle Period dialogues, Plato developed one of his most influential ideas, the theory of forms. According to this theory, the physical world is only a shadow or imperfect copy of a higher, unchanging reality composed of abstract forms, such as justice, beauty, and equality. These forms represent perfect examples of concepts that cannot be fully realized in the material world. Works like Phaedo, Symposium, and Republic explore how humans can come to understand these higher truths through philosophical reasoning. The theory of forms became central to Western metaphysics, influencing debates about universals, categories, and the nature of reality. In addition to metaphysics, Plato used these writings to examine the soul, the pursuit of knowledge, and the conditions necessary for genuine understanding. These dialogues cemented his reputation as a foundational thinker whose ideas would shape centuries of philosophical inquiry. Plato's Republic is one of the most significant works in Western political thought. Written as a philosophical dialogue, it explores the nature of justice, the structure of an ideal society, and the qualities needed for good leadership. Plato argued that a just state is one in which each class performs its proper role, guided by leaders he called philosopher kings, individuals trained to understand truth, virtue, and the common good. The Republic also presents the allegory of the cave, illustrating the difference between appearances and genuine knowledge. While Plato's ideal state was never intended as a concrete political blueprint, it offered a framework for thinking about governance, education, and moral development. The work responded to the political failures Plato witnessed in Athens and reflected his belief that only well-educated, rational leadership could prevent injustice and social instability. In his later years, Plato continued writing dialogues that explored increasingly complex questions about knowledge, language, cosmology, and political institutions. Works such as Theaetetus, Sophist, and Timaeus reflect his ongoing refinement of philosophical concepts developed earlier in his career. These dialogues often involve detailed examination of how humans classify and interpret the world around them. Plato also wrote Laws, his final and longest dialogue, which presents a more practical approach to governance than the idealized vision in the Republic. Instead of philosopher kings, Laws describes a mixed constitutional system aimed at balancing order, education, and civic responsibility. These later works demonstrate Plato's lifelong commitment to philosophical investigation and his willingness to adapt and expand his ideas. They also show his shift toward more detailed analysis of human institutions and social organization. During his decades teaching at the academy, Plato attracted students from across the Greek world, the most famous being Aristotle. Although Aristotle would later develop ideas that diverged significantly from Plato's, their intellectual exchange shaped the foundations of Western philosophy. Plato encouraged rigorous questioning, mathematical training, and the study of abstract reasoning, components that would influence scientific inquiry long after his death. The Academy fostered a collaborative intellectual environment where students debated logic, ethics, astronomy, and political theory. While Plato and Aristotle disagreed on key issues, such as the nature of universals and the structure of reality. Their combined impact defined much of ancient philosophical thought. Plato's role as a teacher thus extended his influence far beyond his own writings, laying the groundwork for entire branches of philosophy, including metaphysics, epistemology, and political theory. Plato died around 347 BCE in Athens, likely in his early 80s. His death marked the end of a long and productive life dedicated to philosophical exploration and teaching. The Academy continued to operate for centuries, preserving and expanding the intellectual tradition he established. Plato's dialogues became foundational texts in philosophy, studied throughout antiquity, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and into the present day. His ideas about justice, knowledge, education, and the structure of reality continue to shape modern thought. The theory of forms, the allegory of the cave, and the political vision of the republic remain central to discussions in philosophy, political science, and literature. Plato's influence is woven into the development of Western intellectual history, and his works serve as primary sources for understanding both the ideas of Socrates and the evolution of ancient Greek philosophy. His legacy endures as one of the most profound in the history of thought.